Ayuk is on fire!
It is finally upon us. January 14, 2023, Brock Purdy gets hurt. The 49ers get beat in Philadelphia 31-7. They really never had a chance in that game, and ever since the schedule came out, everyone has been circling Week 13. The 49ers have been downplaying it. The Eagles have been downplaying a few barbs thrown either way, but both teams trying to downplay this thing. But it is huge. The Eagles come in at 10-1, and the 49ers at 8-3. Any chance that the NFC playoffs go through Santa Clara happen today at the Link in Philadelphia if the 49ers win today. And then we saw Dallas barely beat Seattle, but Dallas is a good team, especially at home. Philly's still got to play at Dallas, at Seattle, and then they've got some cupcakes, too, against the Giants, one against Arizona. But if they could lose once in the next 2 weeks and the 49ers could win, the 49ers could be the top seed in the NFC. That's what it means. John Lund, Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown. Good morning, boys. It's finally here.
It's finally here. It's so funny you said it's finally here, and I was like, we've been all hyped up for this one for so long, and then you get here, and it's the only game on the afternoon slate, really, of any consequence, right? So we got a whole bunch of games this morning.
Cleveland and L.A.
Cleveland and L.A. is a game of
only markets.
Yeah, right.
Those are the only markets that don't have this game. And I was actually in Southern California, and there's a bunch of, let's just say, overserved Browns fans in L.A., but those are the only two markets that will not get this game.
Who's the quarterback for the Cleveland? Is it Flacco?
It's Flacco.
It's going to be Joe Flacco today.
How about that? You know what's funny is a couple of weeks ago, and this is one of the most bizarre parts about my career and day-to-day work here at the Sports Leader is I'm a part and have been for 5 years of the Kansas City Chiefs pregame with our sister station out in Kansas City, 101 The Fox. They hold the Kansas City Chiefs pre- and post games. And so I was talking to them a few weeks ago, and one of their main hosts is from Cleveland, a big Browns fan, and he was like, dude, do you think the Browns should go out and get Joe Flacco? And I was like, man, I didn't really know that was a rumor. I hadn't been paying attention to like Browns waiver wire or potential free agent quarterback stuff. I don't know if it's too little too late, but to me, all you needed was an adult in that room to sort of stabilize things. He's the type of quarterback, when we joke about a defense taking a team to a postseason, you think about that era of Baltimore Ravens football. You think about him. I would say Ben Roethlisberger, obviously a better and a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. I don't think Joe Flacco reaches that level. But you're right. In terms of games markets where this game is important, this is a national game. And by all accounts, it should be a game of the week. However, it's an afternoon game. We get the afternoon slate, and it still gets some sort of prime time there, John, as you're talking about, where nobody else is going to see anything but this game. But to me, the bigger deal is how frequently do we end up with a matchup? One, it's the first time since the Buffalo Bills that went to 4 straight Super Bowls where a team has lost a Super Bowl and then come back and started at least 9-1. The Eagles come in today at 10-1. They've lost 2 home games in each of the last 2 years. But how frequently does a game that is on the schedule when does it come out? May? Something like that? We get the schedule in May. How frequently does it live up to what you're hoping it's going to be in Week 13 from where it was in the NFC Championship? I mean, these may again be the two teams, and they may be the two best teams in football, but they're likely to be the two that meet again in the NFC title.
Yeah, and Philadelphia's been playing, well the entire season, right? I mean, they've found ways to win football games. The 49ers, they go on that 3-game skid, but then they get back to playing the way they're playing. So, yeah, it's going to live up to hype. And John, you said it. I mean, this is number 1 seed. I mean, this is what you fight for the entire football season, the opportunity to kind of have that bye and then not to go on the road. So this is a super important game. I think, you can forget about, last season was last season. Brock Purdy goes down, but now you got a healthy offense. You got a very good defense still. And on both sides of the ball, so it's gonna live up to its expectation, and I think it's gonna be a fantastic game. I mean, I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, look, I think that even though both teams have obviously been muted this week, I mean, you heard Hassan Reddick last week say, bring it on. Basically, there's been a couple of slips, but it's interesting. George Kittle was asked on a national show, how big is this game? Oh, it's just any other game. Debo Samuel, who's notorious for his trash talk.
He didn't say anything after last year's loss.
Just another game. He was asked about calling James Bradbury trash and said, I don't regret anything I said. He didn't say it again, but he said, I don't regret anything I said. So they're trying to keep this thing kind of down and muted a little bit. But look, the 49ers talked a bunch of offseason trash about the Eagles. Everybody knows they did. And so the Eagles kind of have a chip on their shoulder like, oh, you don't respect us? You didn't get to beat us? Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel both after the game, because if you look at the play that Brock Purdy got hurt on It's a double move to the out, and he has Bradbury beat, but it's part of the game, and I think this is one thing 49ers fans don't acknowledge enough, that the quarterback being injured was not a fluke. He didn't get tripped by a turf monster or something like that. Hassan Reddick ripped his arm off, and he was out and had to rehab, and that's part of the game, and you know it, Dennis. I mean, that's part of what you're trying to do. I'm trying to get the backup quarterback, Josh Johnson, in the game. And then they took him out of the game. So you got to give Philadelphia credit. You got to respect Philadelphia. Doesn't mean I don't think the 49ers can go in there and win. But this is the game of the year. These are the two best teams, I believe. All due respect to the teams in the AFC. Kansas City offensively is not playing to where they can. Maybe the Ravens. The Ravens defensively.
I'd say the Ravens,
Lamar.
they're in the mark. To me, it's those three teams.
Yeah.
It's the Niners, the Eagles, and the Ravens.
Right.
And we'll see them. We'll see them in a couple
we'll
weeks.
See them. So, look, this is important on a lot of levels because the 49ers put a target on their back by saying if Brock wouldn't have gotten hurt, essentially they all said if Brock wouldn't have gotten hurt, we'd have won that football game. So
and then your favorite. I mean, the home team is not. I mean, you're the underdog. I mean, and you're the team that where they're 10-1.
How would you feel like that as a player?
I mean,
like you're 10-1 and you beat them last year, and you're the underdog at home.
That adds for the hype. That adds to the hype a little bit. So but again, all that is done. It's done and finished. You're getting ready to play a football game right now. It's the important football game, the biggest game of the year. You have to attack it. Like George Kittle said, like it's a business trip. It's one game at a time. But you remember last season, and you remember your quarterback going down, and you remember your second string quarterback going down, and just not have an opportunity to go to Super Bowl and compete for a championship. So it becomes huge.
Well, here's what I'll say about what happened after last year. I was there. I was at the NFC Championship last year and lasted about 6 snaps, right, for Brock Purdy. Well, don't forget about the player right before Devontae Smith with the catch up the sideline that was not a catch. Could have been
that's what we talked about.
Did not review.
If he reviews it, then the cosmic universe changes because then he's not on the field. We can go down that road.
If it coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Right. That's like human evolution. It's like, oh man, that's a non-ending discussion.
But I'll say this: it was a heartbreaking loss because of the way the season went. But when we do the 30 for 30 on these 49ers and on this era, and if they get a Super Bowl or they go on a run here, these will be the battle scars that sort of pave that road, right? And so what's interesting is the season, how many times last year did any of us or 49er fans, I'm talking from preseason where Trey Lance is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 into him getting hurt and Jimmy comes back. I think our hopes maybe went up week 2 when Jimmy comes back and leads that victory. Then he steps out of the back of the end zone week 3 in Denver. Everybody gets hurt on defense. They lose to Atlanta. We went through so many different waves. When Brock Purdy became the quarterback, John, you and I kind of scoffed at the idea that anybody like this could not only lead a team to the playoffs and turn things around, but take them to a Super Bowl.
He can win
and be
a Super
victorious.
Bowl, Cubs.
Now, he's yet to do it, but if you take a team in the way that he did last year and the way he's played this year to an NFC championship, you are the caliber of team and the caliber of quarterback that can do it. So while I hate thinking if he was healthy, they might have won it, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know how good I felt and how confident I was going into that game last year. I still thought this defense is really, really tough. And Dennis, that's what good D-lines do. They hit the quarterback. It's 72 sacks going into last year's game, and that's what they did. You didn't protect. You let the quarterback get hit. You run the risk of having him get knocked out of the game, right? So when you flip the coin to this side, or you flip the calendar to this year, we'll say, and the defensive line for the Eagles is not what it was last year. They're not getting home as much. They are dangerous. You got guys like Jalen Carter. He's the one who I've seen who had a comment about something going on with the 49ers because you hear about all these superstars. I haven't heard a lot about their O-line. And I went, you don't know who Trent Williams is? You don't know who that guy Trent Williams is? So we'll see, man. But I think it's a different Eagles team, and I think they're good. I think they're battle-tested. They've won a lot of close games and found ways to win. I also think the Niners are more skilled, and I think Brock Purdy is playing better quarterback.
And, let's go back to the line for just a second. The reason why, and you just mentioned this real quickly, the reason why the line is where it is it's aesthetics. And it's like the stock market, and that's how lines work. And so the 49ers, in their victories this year, the average margin of victory for the 49ers is 21.3 points. The average margin of victory for the Eagles is 7 points. They've played 4 consecutive one-score games. They're 7-1 in one-score games. The 49ers are 1-2 in one-score games. So and look, I don't know, Dennis, if that's a learned thing or it doesn't matter, but I would think this is going to be a close game today. And so if it is it the team that blows everybody out like the Niners, or is it the team that's 7-1 and has learned how to win close games like last week against Buffalo?
Well, games like this, it's kind of predicated on the trenches, and we always talk about it. I mean, you got to win, and you got to win, and you got to win often in the trenches. And it shows if you let Philadelphia stick around, I mean, they're going to find a way to win. That overtime last week, it was just like, wow. I mean, this is a team, they got confidence, and they believe they can win football games, and they figure out how to win football games. So if you can get a fast start, get some points on the board, and play good defense, I think you can beat this game.
Coach talked about this. Time for the QB comparison. That's sponsored by Friedman's Appliance, proudly serving all of Northern California with a wide selection of luxury appliances. Visit them in Pleasant Hill to see the Friedman's difference, and by our favorite Dolce Vita Tequila, pure and simple.
That's right.
So let's start with you. We've done a ton of Brock Purdy, but Jalen Hurts, he's not having quite the year he had last year. His knee has given him trouble, but I tell you, the last few weeks that I've watched him, especially in that Buffalo game, looks fine to me.
He's pretty good after the bye. I think the bye week was big for them. A couple of weeks ago, I know they came back and they beat Kansas City in Kansas City, which is maybe their most impressive win of the year. They're both coming out of the bye. It's a Monday night on the road, and they held Kansas City scoreless and beat Indy in the second half and beat Andy Reid home to 17 points off a bye. Teams don't do that, but Jalen Hurts is a guy who can put teams on his back. I mean, we Tom and I were again going through the 2019 game between Iowa State and Oklahoma when he and Brock Purdy went toe-to-toe, and they both went for 5 touchdowns. Brock threw for 5. He threw for 3 and ran for 2. That's what the Niners have to contain today, and that's what the D-line has looked so good at doing since Chase Young got here. Last week, I think we talked about it in the postgame, every sack they got, John, you kind of said it, looked the exact same. It was like they contained on the outside, they moved the inside part of the pocket, they put pressure in the quarterback's face, and Geno Smith then on Thursday night had to either move to the side where there was Chase Young and Nick Bosa. But the reason I think, and I talked to Tim Ryan about this week, the way you know they're containing is you're getting a bunch of half sacks. Tons of half sacks across the board. Everybody is getting home. A lot of guys are finishing in the backfield. And because of that, because of what we saw from Geno, who was more banged up last week, gives me confidence that they're going to be able to do that this week. But this is the elite version of what we saw from Geno Smith.
And Jalen Hurts is a guy. He's athletic. We know he's strong. He's got good vision down the football field. And, the kryptonite to the 49ers defense is mobile quarterbacks. And Jalen is that. So you have to have that contained rush. But the most important, you got to have that interior rush, too. Eric Armstead, Hargrave. You got to get that collapse in the inside and let your outside guys have that contain, and you can kind of wrap them up. But I don't know if you spy this guy or what you do as a linebacker, but, you got to keep an eye on him because he's going to run the ball and make some plays.
Make sure you check us out. We are live. Countdown to kickoff as you get ready for the game of the year, the 49ers and the Eagles. John Lund, Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown. When we come back, everybody wants to look back at that NFC Championship game, but there are differences on both sides of the ball. We'll get into that next. Remember, jump on YouTube and Twitch. We got the conversation going on there as well. We'll respond to some of the good ones. We'll do it all coming up next. Getting you ready for the Eagles and the 49ers, the game of the year. Countdown to kickoff only here on the Sports Leader.
I mean, I guess people can make it like that, really. For us, it's like I said, we're later in the year, so every single game is huge in terms of going into the playoffs and setting yourself up for where you're going to be at in the playoffs. So for us, that's how we're looking at it. That's how I'm looking at it. It's going to be a tough place to play. They're a really good team. They've found ways to win this year, and they're really good. And so for us, it's another great challenge. But to say, have I had this game circled for last year? Honestly, it hasn't been like that for me. It's been, how can I be the best from the beginning of the season to where we are now? I've taken it one day, 1 week at a time, and this is our next challenge, Week 13 in Philadelphia.
Thanks for joining us. Game of the year, getting you ready for the Eagles and the 49ers. Sean Lund, Adam Copeland, and Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown, who, by the way,
The Dogs
is fresh off of a trip to Las Vegas in which he saw Washington beat Oregon. Not to deviate too far, but come on, man. Florida State's undefeated. You couldn't not have the SEC in, so Alabama is your 4. Your Dogs are the 2. Will take on Steve Sarkisian in Texas. And the Michigan Wolverines, our friend Jim Harbaugh, will take on Alabama, and then we'll go from there. So congratulations.
Yeah, and it was fun to be there. I mean, it was a great venue. I had never been to that stadium. That's a great stadium.
You say that quarterback's name. Is it Penix?
Penix, Michael Penix.
Oh, Penix, sorry.
Look at him taking shots at you.
There were some interesting
shots at you.
Cope, there were some interesting signs with his last name in that
But
stadium.
Ducks fans?
Yeah, there was some creative
I'll
signs.
tell you what, he's a blast. And how about that kick last week? Was that to win or to send it to overtime? I think it was a winning game in overtime, right? They take it to overtime and win, then they go and they beat Oregon yesterday or on a Friday night.
And there was a lot of Oregon fans there. There were a lot of Husky fans there. It was a good time. We really enjoyed ourselves. It's good seeing guys that you play with. We're all old and fat and beat up, but we still have the war stories. And it was a fun trip. It was good for the Dogs. You go back now. You play Texas where? In New Orleans, or is it in Texas? What is it? The Sugar Bowl?
I got to go back and look. One's the Rose Bowl and one's the Sugar. I don't know. I got to look back.
See, this is the problem. This is why we're getting out of this system. This is the problem.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
But I mean, as it stands right now, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, we're hoping for a better showing than last time, though. You know what
I mean, who's going to win a national championship?
I'll tell you what. I think it's the best. I think it's the best field we've had in a while in terms of Michigan's at the top, and I think Michigan's still gettable. And then Washington is obviously lost. I like when teams have been in that have lost at least once because you see them harden. It's kind of what we're doing with the 49ers here. We saw them lose those 3 games. They made a correction. They got a different guy at the trade deadline. They added a huge weapon. They've made some changes defensively. Brock Purdy's made some adjustments himself. He's still going to be that risk taker, but I think in terms of teams that hardened coming out of a loss, I kind of like that. We saw Oregon get the brakes beat off them last year in Dan Lanning's first trip to Georgia, and they got beat bad. Then this year got a whole lot better. But it's going to be fun. I like seeing different fields of teams in Texas. That'll be an exciting. They had the best win in the country.
Yeah,
over Alabama. And what, you thought Bama wasn't going? Come on.
SEC, they're not going to have the SEC in there.
I love the SEC stressing out about not getting a team in. Like what? So now you're dealing with what everybody else has dealt with for the last however many years. So,
Exactly.
Anyway.
All right, let's get you to the Eagles and the 49ers and get into some of the changes between the NFC Championship game and now. Let's start with the health report. That is sponsored by good friends at Danville Neuropathy Center, bringing your nerve pain to an end. As far as injuries are concerned, they're mostly on the Eagles' end. The 49ers are about as healthy as we've seen them all year. The questions surround the Eagles. Will Dallas Goedert play today? He's been out, and he's been campaigning to play. Zach Cunningham is probably not going to play today as well, and Lane Johnson was one who didn't play last week, the right tackle, who false starts on every single play, just so if I know the officials are listening to the pregame show. 65 false starts on every single play. It sounds like he's going to play. As far as the 49ers are concerned, we already know the injuries. Hufunga's been out for a couple of weeks. We know that. They're about as healthy as they've been all year long. And you know what's funny about this is that's kind of what Kyle Shanahan's teams do, right? They go through bangs and injuries and they're bruised and this, that, and the other. And at this point of the season, they get healthy. So, Dennis, obviously health is a major reason or major discussion point in this game because the Eagles have a few of them. And if you're healthy in this sport, you know, the other sports you have some injuries, but you know you're going to have injuries, but they look pretty good. And one I want to point out, Christian McCaffrey, if that's a regular season game last year in the NFC Championship game, he doesn't play. If it's the Seahawks game, he doesn't play. It's the NFC Championship game, he plays. Christian McCaffrey is as close to 100% as you can be. And that's a massive difference in that game, in this game.
Yeah, and you're healthy. You know, Eric Armstead, I think he's questionable for his foot or something, but he's going to be important. I mean, that like we talked about that push in the middle is going to be important today against this quarterback and also against the run because, Philadelphia wants to run the football. I mean, they want to run the football. So, that's important if Eric Armstead can play. If he's not, Kevin Givens has to get in there. He has to play or Kinlaw. But it's going to be important in the middle of that defensive line to be, effective and to win at the line of scrimmage.
And for offensive line, it's been John Feliciano in there, right? And we heard from Matt Mayoko over the last couple of weeks that even when they get completely healthy there, the plan is still to cycle him in and out. I think we all feel good about that. I think that's something you see this in like baseball where you get to know a manager like year after year. We've talked about this with Kyle. You see which pieces he likes to have. Like when they had Dan Brunskill there and a guy who could cycle in and out in different positions across the line, you kind of have a utility player on the infield who can play some corner outfield for you. He can mix basically anywhere there. That's a huge weapon to have. The only concern here is that John Feliciano is also the backup center. Is that right?
Yes.
So if something were to happen to Jake Brendel or to Feliciano, then you're maybe a pretty shallow at one spot or in some trouble.
Burford can play today. It's just that against this team especially, this is kind of a street fight inside. Dennis, you probably would have loved this game. It's a street fight inside. Burford just has not taken the steps forward that I thought he was going to take. Yeah. Banks has bounced back from his injury and is playing better. We all know what Trent Williams is going to do. Brendel's had some nicely graded games, depending on what you believe in Pro Football Focus. But the right side of the line, and that's the one that took out Brock Purdy last year. Now, please don't block Hassan Reddick with a tight end. Thank you very much. But the right side of that line
what happened?
with Burford and McKivitz, that's a problem. And so as we start looking at matchups and say, well, where can you make some hay here? Philadelphia is going to be targeting that side of the line, and they would have been targeting that side of the line anyway because that's where Hassan Reddick comes from. So they've got to deal with that. And then some of the changes, obviously Hargrave is here, but Jalen Carter is probably the defensive rookie of the year. Fantastic. They're 8 deep on the defensive line. I mean, their second-team defensive line could start. Josh Sweat's having a hell of a year. Jordan Davis, we saw him track down Josh Allen last week. He's sideline to sideline at like 350 pounds.
Yeah.
There is no drop-off, even though Javon Hargrave is wearing red instead of green this year.
But they are not getting to the quarterback as frequently. And the sack numbers look real good. Over the last few weeks, though, the Niners have been far better on their defensive line, right? The Niners sack numbers almost totaling where the Eagles are and where they're projected. Again, 72 last year was incredible. But check this out. The offensive line's been pretty decent without Spencer Burford, which has been, 2 games or 3 games? Two games, I think, for Burford. So they've allowed 11 pressures total without Burford. Front Williams has allowed 1, McKivitz 3, Feliciano 4, Brendel 1, Banks 2. Purdy's taken 1 sack for a -1 yard in the time that Burford's been out. So the O-line's been playing as good as it's played all season long, I think, from just a straight across pressures and statistical standpoint, if you buy into those numbers. Defense, 25 pressures against the Seahawks, and they're getting home 6 times, 6 sacks in 15 in the last 3 games. Bosa's got 9, Chase Young had 1. Excuse me, this is pressures, Bosa 9, Chase Young 1, Armstead had 3. Everybody's getting back there. The fact of the matter is there's like 11 guys there that are getting into the backfield.
Yeah, and the 49ers have been super successful on that right side, right? They run the ball behind Aaron Banks and Trent Williams. That's what they do. So I expect to see a lot of counters. I mean, that defense is going to be flying to that right side when the ball's handed off. Christian McCaffrey, with his vision and his footwork, his one cut, one step in the cut, he's going to be cutting back a lot, going back to the right side because everyone's going to be looking at that on that right side. I mean, the ball's going to be running. Chris McCaffrey on that side. There's going to be a lot of opportunities on the backside.
To me, and I'm not doing this because you're sitting here, this is where the game is going to be won. The Eagles, now that they get Lane Johnson back, and I don't know how effective he's going to be, but he's tough. He's been injured a lot the last couple of years. So their offensive line, to me, Mulata at left tackle, Landon Dickinson, the kid out of Alabama, Jason Kelsey, who absolutely put Kinlaw on skates. This game is why they went out and got Javon Hargrave, because they got sick of 99 being on skates the entire time. Cam Jurgens is new at right guard, and then Lane Johnson at right tackle. This is probably talent-wise the best offensive line in the league against maybe the hottest defensive line in the league. And then you flip it to the other side. We talked about 2 deep for the Eagles on their defensive line, 98 Jalen Carter, the rookie out of Georgia, taking over for Hargrave. And then this offensive line, that's where it's won. Can the Niners run it? Can they protect Brock Purdy? Because if they could have protected him in the NFC Championship game, they might have gotten to and won a Super Bowl. And then it comes down to what Philadelphia wants to do. And their big addition offensively, thanks, Lions, DeAndre Swift is I think, a massive upgrade over Miles Sanders and the guys they had. And they still have some depth there. A couple of those guys are still there. Sanders is in Carolina. But when we talk about differences, Hargrave's wearing red now. DeAndre Swift comes over. Those kind of things. The linebackers leaving. They lost both their linebackers.
They're not healthy and not great at linebacker.
Well, Cunningham's out. Nicholas Morrow was just a late pickup. that's where I think the 49ers can really take advantage. So it's the offensive and defensive lines, but there is places to take advantage. And the 49ers, even though they said, no, James Bradbury's not trash, he's about the 100th ranked corner in the league, they still think they can take advantage of double moves. Bradbury and Slay by name are great, but by production this year aren't as good as they were last year.
Yeah, and well, that's where the Niners have the big advantage. And we talk about it position by position. The backfield is kind of my fear here because that's the one part that they did not have last year that was nearly as good. It was like Boston Scott. Who else was back there last year?
Yeah.
This year, I thought, and we talked about it this week actually a little bit with Adam Kaplan, who does the.
He's awesome.
He's a fantastic football analyst. Does a great work with the Eagles and great at breaking a lot of this stuff down. He's watched basically every game and every snap they've played and followed them since training camp. Derek Papa and I were talking about whether or not we would see, is it Rashad Penny they have in the backfield as well?
He's
kind of more of a hulking guy. Yeah.
Like in Seattle, like 2 years ago, he was the best running back in the second half. He was a former first-round pick out of San Diego State, was in Seattle. And he's been buried, number 23, he's been buried on their depth chart. He's like the fourth-string running back. That's how much talent they have.
He hadn't dressed for like several weeks,
Right.
and then all of a sudden he dressed, and Adam Kaplan thought it was sort of funny, and he said it was sort of odd, and he like cracked some jokes about it, but I said, do you expect to see him at all? Could they do a change of pace thing a little bit this week? We've got a bigger back. You plan to run the ball a little bit more, and he said, no, I don't expect that at all. DeAndre Swift is the guy. They're going to come out with their game plan. Jalen Hurts is able to run it, and maybe you see a little bit, but not something that he thinks is going to be a major part of the game plan. So if they can stifle the run, and they have had trouble stopping the run at times this year, but not so much since Chase Young has showed up, I think this is a game that if the 49ers suppress them early, it's going to be really hard for the Eagles to come back.
Yeah, what kind of a game is this? Like in the trenches when you have a great offensive line, your defensive line is red hot. Yeah.
As a defensive lineman, I remember, we had those battles with Dallas. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. We knew we saw them on tape. We had played them a couple of times for NFC champion. We knew. They were strong, they were fast, they were athletic. And with a running back like Emmitt Smith, they wanted to run the football. So this is the game, you like as a defensive lineman. You strap yourself up. You ain't got to. You're going to pass rush, but you got to defend the run. First and second down, and you got to win. So this is a game that defensive linemen and offensive linemen you kind of live for and you play for because it's going to be physical. It's going to be physical up front. And we talked about last season with Kinlaw being on roller skates. This is what you do. It's going to be a smack in the mouth. It's going to be a tough football game, and you strap it on and you get ready to go.
Think about that. Your defensive line, it was Eric Williams at right tackle, Nate Newton, Mark Sipnowski, Mark Tuinei, Larry Allen.
Flashbacks.
Think about that. That's one of the best offensive lines in history.
Yeah, it was. They were huge, but they were quick. They were strong. They ran a lot of counters. Center would pull out, kind of like Kelsey does. So it was a challenge.
Similarly sized. He wasn't a big guy.
Yeah, it was.
Wasn't a big guy.
They were big dude, but they were very athletic. And they ran a lot of stuff to the perimeter. Of course, Emmitt Smith was great at cutting back his vision. So it was a tough game, and you had to play your best game to bring your A game.
All right, we'll build the game plan. Coming up next, we'll take a closer look at this whole thing. Eagles and 49ers from the link. That starts at 1:25, by the way.
We're going to talk to Matt Mayoko in just a few minutes. So we'll come on back. We'll go out to by the way, we're going in two different guys we got out there now. Matt Mayoko. We'll get the weather report and everything from him because it was going to be sort of a smattering of rain today, but I didn't think it was going to be all that heavy. I have not checked since Friday afternoon. And then in about an hour, the newest addition to the KNBR lineup, John Dickinson, who was here yesterday doing our Dubs OT Warriors postgame. He'll be at he's out at Lincoln Financial.
Nice.
We'll check in with him. Boots on the ground, hardest working guy in sports media. He's out there. We'll talk to him at 11:30 this morning. So we'll build the game plan for you. We'll talk more about when we come back too. Who does this game mean more to? Because the 49ers, I think, we're acting like, it's just a normal game. It's another game. We need this one. The Eagles can afford to lose it and still get the number one seed. The Niners, if they want their one seed hopes alive, have to win this game and then really can't afford to lose the rest of the way. We'll talk more about that with Matt Mayoko and in about an hour, John Dickinson, super reporter, only here on the Sports Leader.
What's happening? Thanks for joining us. Getting you ready for the game of the year, the Eagles and the 49ers. Let's get you the latest from the link. And here's what I'm impressed with. I'm always impressed with Matt Mayoko, 49ers Insider, 49ers Talk Podcast, NBC Sports Bay Area. Incredibly impressed always with him. But the fact that you were with the college basketball guru, and I think you guys were hanging out, Joe Lenardi. I mean, my God, man, you know everybody. You're big time. Saw that on your social media.
He informs me, though, I'm on the bubble.
So. Very well played.
Better than being first 4 out or something like that. But yeah, no, I've gotten to know Joe pretty well.
Cool.
Great guy. He's obviously a Philly basketball guy. St. Joe. They had the Big 5 Classic here, and so college basketball very close to the stadium where the Eagles and 49ers are, and where they'll be playing later. So yeah, a good Saturday, and today could be a really good Sunday. Should be fun. Should be a lot more fun than the NFC Championship game, which I have repeatedly called the worst football game in the history of the sport.
Yeah, like 5 minutes in, it's like, is there anything else on? Like, you're at the game looking for another game to watch. I mean, it's like it's over.
I mean, when you go to an NFL game, you expect one team to be able to throw the football, right?
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. Yeah.
And then also, because the Eagles just there's no chance the 49ers have a winning this game, so they shut it down, and we didn't see Jalen Hurts do much of anything. So it was really a horrible game. And so this game, man, maybe is there some wood here I can knock on, but looks like it's for Micah. But this game should be really interesting, and there are no excuses for the 49ers. I mean, this is a game they should win, so say the odds makers and everybody else probably.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of that, Matthew? I mean, come in, you're the home team, you've won. I mean, you've been on this winning streak and you're playing really good football. And then you're the underdog. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think because the odds makers figured that a lot of people would be betting the 49ers side. And, I mean, when you look at it, the 49ers are rested. They're playing good football. They have since Chase Young came to the team. And the Eagles have they've gone through the grinder here. This is their third game in 13 days. They played Kansas City on a Monday night. They came back and played an overtime game against Buffalo, and now they face the 49ers. So, and I think the 49ers are healthier than the Eagles are. Hey, what I say, any Eagles fans who are upset that the 49ers are the favorite, hey, put your money where your mouth is then. Let's see. If
take the money line.
The odds are for your team. So if you're that offended, then, put the mortgage on it. But, I think there are a lot of reasons why this game stacks up for the 49ers. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I mean, obviously the Eagles, there's been so many games this year where the Eagles have been tested, where the Eagles have been behind, where the Eagles have looked like they were going to lose. And the fact of the matter is they've only lost once. So they have this secret sauce of being able to just win games. And that's a really good secret sauce to have.
Talking to Matt Mayoka, who's out in Philadelphia for the rematch of the NFC Championship. Matt, when I called it the worst game in football history, I didn't think it was going to go down in the annals like that of football. So I apologize if it's stuck to that game, but it's an apt description.
It's official.
Yeah, it's official. It's good.
It's official.
For this game, I was thinking about this the other day because it seems like we were talking on our show, Tom and I were about who this game means more to. And in the standings, obviously the 49ers. They need it if they want to have a shot still at the 1 seed. But then I think about, in order to do that, you're probably going to have to win out if you're the Niners, which means a win on Christmas Day against Baltimore. That game's at home. But the Eagles don't have the toughest end of season. I think their final 3 are like Giants, Arizona Giants, or something like that, right? So
it's either at Dallas or at Seattle, and Seattle. Ugh.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering.
Yeah, but what are the 49ers' final 3, though?
Right.
That's not exactly a murder.
Well, the Ravens, right? I mean, it's the Ravens one is the only one that really sticks out, right?
Yeah.
We give a lot of credit to Gehrig and Ruth, by the way, in that murderer's row. They're carrying that thing. Real quick, though, I'm wondering what the more difficult road ahead is. Is it to win out and then to have to win still in the NFC Championship against the Eagles, but you get it at home and you don't have to play that early game? Or is it to have to play as the number 2 seed, potentially go back to Philly, but you have to play the extra game? That's where I'm like, what road is the tougher road to travel?
Oh my gosh! How many minutes do I have here on
as much as you want? I mean, the game starts at 1:25.
We got like 3 hours
Oh, okay,
till kick.
perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
I know you're ahead of us.
I don't know why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, if I can go get a drink of water, hang out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Whatever you got.
I think this game is important for both teams because I believe if the 49ers win this game, at the end of next week's games, they're going to be the number 1 seed.
I agree with you.
I think Philadelphia is going to go to Dallas, and I think Dallas is going to beat the Eagles. If the Eagles win, I think they're going to be the number 1 seed because now they've created a little separation. They'll probably go on to win the NFC East. Even though that's, they would be, a game behind the Cowboys even if the Cowboys lose or if the Cowboys beat them next week. But the thing is, I think that going into the playoffs, I'm going to assume that the number 5 seed is going to beat the number 4 seed. Whether that's the Eagles against the Falcons or whatever or the Cowboys against Falcons, the NFC East winner will go to the NFC South winner and win. Now the onus is on the Detroit Lions. I'm less certain that the Detroit Lions will hold serve and beat the number 6 seed. So I think, and I know 49er fans might laugh at me, but I think the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Cowboys are a cut above all the other teams in the NFC. And I think, although, watching them play Thursday, I wasn't super impressed. But I think the Cowboys are still going to be a factor, or they have the potential to be a factor in the postseason. And I think if you're the number 1 seed, you don't want to face the Cowboys in the semifinal, the NFC semifinal. You'd much rather face the Lions. So I don't know. I think we won't know until the divisional round of the playoffs who sets up better. Because even if you're the number 1 seed, I think it's not real easy to, even though it'll be on your home field, I don't think it's going to be real easy to beat either the Cowboys at home and then the Eagles, if you're the 49ers, or if you're the Cowboys or the Eagles, beating the Cowboys at home and then the 49ers. So did that make any sense?
No.
I just think that there are 3
So
teams
what weighs
that are
harder,
good.
Matt? Is it the win out, do you think, or is it the because I get exactly what you're saying. The matchups become more difficult based on the seeding and where you could fall.
Yeah. Look at what the AFC has been the last few years. It's been Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And basically, in those previous years, the team that had to play 2 of those 3 games was the team that lost in the AFC Championship game. And so I don't know that the NFC is up to that level quite yet.
But you're going Cowboys, Niners, and Eagles. If you've got to play two of the three.
Well, here's the thing.
I think the odds work a little bit against you.
That's what I'm with you there.
One of those teams.
The biggest advantage in all of sports, in playoffs, I don't care what sport you're talking about, is being the number one seed in each one of these conferences, because you get the bye and then everything goes through you. So the difference being...
Don't tell the Packers that. The Packers lost to the 49ers as the number one seed 2 years ago.
No, it's true, but I still think that getting the week off, and that was an amazing game. Willis gets the block. They make some great plays in that game. But I think that getting that week off, especially this year, and then, like you said, everything goes through you. So it's week off, plus you don't have to go to Philadelphia. It's week off, and then Detroit is up 21-0 right now on the Saints, so they're breathing right down your neck. Look, as good as the 49ers are, I don't think they're going to play on the first weekend of the playoffs, go to Detroit, go to Philadelphia, play in the Super Bowl. That's an unbelievably hard road to try to win this thing.
Yeah, and the goal, right, guys, is to have that number one seed. I know they go in the Green Bay, and you beat Green Bay, but again, those are making plays at the end of the football game. So, I mean, as a player,
I think as a team, the goal is without question. The 49ers and the Eagles right now in their locker rooms aren't going, "Hey guys, remember, if we get the number one seed, it might end up working against us." No, I mean, absolutely not. These teams want dearly to get the number one seed, and you know what? It could be a game changer. And you could make the argument that the reason the 49ers lost last year in the NFC Championship game was because they didn't have the number one seed. The fact that the snap count is, it's silent count. You have to get off in pass protection at the snap of the ball rather than being able to hear your signals gives Hassan Reddick a split second, closer to the quarterback, and the backup tight end isn't able to get a hand on him. So who knows if that? I mean, this is certainly an ifs and buts or candy and nuts every day would be Christmas type of scenario. But it's possible that Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt last year if that's at Levi Stadium.
Right, or Kyle challenges Devontae Smith. But we won't talk about that. All right, from an injury standpoint.
I know.
I shouldn't have even said it. I shouldn't even have said it, because then you're messing with the universe and all that kind of stuff.
I asked him about that this week. Did you hear what he said?
No, what did he say?
No, well, he said that his philosophy is if there's any question that and the team is rushing up there after a big play, you throw the challenge flag.
You have to know.
He said because the replay they showed on the board looked like he caught it, because none of the players on the field were saying it was incomplete, because the guys in the booth who watched
wasn't it Hufunga who was the closest and should have said, I don't think he caught it, but then he did.
Well, but he wasn't real demonstrative. Right. I remember watching him, and he was not at all. I think he did it initially, and then he stopped. But they remember now, the entire planet did not know until they scored the touchdown and they came back from the commercial break, and then Fox showed that replay.
Right.
But he said that his philosophy is to throw the challenge flag if there's any doubt.
Is that still his philosophy or not? He changed
because he did it against. No, but I'm saying is he felt like there was no doubt the word he was getting in the booth that it was definitely a catch. But he did it against Jacksonville this year, where Jacksonville did something similar, and they rushed to the line of scrimmage. He threw the challenge flag, and then they lost the challenge. So I guess by not throwing it, you're screwed, and by throwing it, you're screwed.
That's interesting. To the game itself, though, from an injury standpoint, Eric Armstead seems to be the one with the foot. Pretty much other than that, fairly healthy. I mean, we already know Hufunga and things like that. Burford possibly, but I like Feliciano in that situation. But Philadelphia's a little bit different. Goddard's scrambling to try to play. Cunningham doesn't look like he's going to play. So where are we in terms of some of the key Eagles that you're hearing about?
Yeah, and I would say that maybe Ray McLeod doesn't play this game. They brought up Chris Conley for the 49ers from the practice squad, so that kind of makes me think that maybe he's iffy, and if so, Ronnie Bell would be the guy fielding punts, so keep an eye on that. I do think that Armstead's going to play. Eagles-wise, I know Fletcher Cox wants to play, and he's angling to play. Watching him last week hobble off with the groin injury, to me that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I was just talking to someone with the Eagles who thought if he does suit up, it might be 15, 20 snaps in this game. But there's going to be some major areas for the 49ers to exploit in this game in the middle of that defense with Zach Cunningham out and Nicholas Morrow is their proven linebacker. And then Ellis, Luther Ellis's son, whose name Christian Ellis.
Right.
He probably will be playing. So look for the 49ers to attack the middle of the field, whether that's Christian McCaffrey on choice routes or George Kittle over the middle or heck, Deebo Samuel over the middle. That would be the area where the 49ers should be able to kind of dictate this. But other than that, Lane Johnson should be back in the lineup. My question with him at right tackle is, having not played last week and battling kind of a groin issue, I would think you need to be 100% and fine-tuned and all that to go up against Nick Bosa, because with Chase Young on the other side, what does that mean? That means more one-on-one opportunities for Bosa, more than he's ever gotten now with Chase Young out there. It's kind of leveled the playing field a little bit, and it's shown up across the board with the 49ers. I think they had 18 sacks, the 49ers did, in 8 games. And now in the past 3 games, they have 15 sacks since Chase Young. So that's been beneficial, even though Chase Young has not a whole bunch of sacks, 1.5, I think, since he's come to the team. It's really proven beneficial for guys like Bosa and Armstead and Javon Hargrave.
Matt, thanks so much, man. We appreciate the time, as always. Enjoy the game. Hopefully it's better than the NFC Championship last year, unless it goes the other way for the Niners. Let's hope everybody can throw for the duration of the game. That's the plan for this one. And we will talk to you soon, man. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Good stuff there. Matt Mayoko, boots on the ground. We will go back out to Philadelphia in about 40 minutes here to talk to our guy, John Dickinson, who is out getting ready for the Eagles and the 49ers, a 1:25 kickoff. We'll hand it over to Greg and Tim at 12:25. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, and John Lund with you. Niners and the Eagles, the game of the year. More to come here. When we come on back, we'll let you know what's going on around the league. The Detroit Lions, as you said, John, breathing down the Niners' neck here in the NFC standings. We'll talk more about that next here on the Sports Leader.
I'm happy he's on our side, not their side this time around. Just has been so consistent for us in terms of getting just disruption up there in the middle of our defensive line has been such a key piece to what we do all season long. The ability to be available every single week, staying healthy and being as disruptive as he is, physical, out the stack. He fit right into what we do as soon as he got here, so I'm not surprised at all at the way that he's produced and been the player that we needed him to be.
Go ahead. Voice of Javon Hargrave, is that who that was?
That's Fred Warner.
That was Fred Warner. I'm all off on my my notes here. Fred Warner on the impact of Javon Hargrave joining the 49er defense there as the Niners steal a player, a big piece of that defensive line from the Eagles D-line last year, but they replace him with Jalen Carter. That speaks to the volume of what Nick Sirianni's done. He's grown on me a lot, I think, in the last couple of years. For a long time, just the image of him sobbing at the national anthem was fried into my head. And now he's clearly a damn good coach, a damn good game planner. We were talking to Adam Kaplan, as I said earlier this week, and he was talking about them giving Jalen Hurts the shot. That they went after Russell Wilson. They tried to get Wilson. They tried to get Deshaun Watson. Philadelphia did.
By the way, can we stop at Wilson for just 1 second?
Go ahead.
Thank goodness, as much as you may not like the Eagles and the rival they've become for the 49ers.
Hot damn, can you imagine?
But there was a trade on the table that Seattle said no to that would have sent Russell Wilson to the Eagles.
For Hurts?
Jalen Hurts, and you don't remember all those picks that Denver gave up? And they gave up like Noah Fant and Drew Lock and all
those
that.
Picks.
So that same package of picks was going to Seattle and Jalen Hurts. So they had all those picks. They got Devin Weatherspoon and all that. They still would have gotten all those picks, and they would have had Jalen Hurts. So at least you don't have Jalen Hurts in your own division, which Seattle said, nah, we think we like the Denver package better, which wasn't horrible. It's just that Jalen Hurts in those picks or Drew Lock and Noah Fant and all those
The
picks.
picks ended up being better.
Yeah,
but the quarterback situation
wouldn't have been as bad.
You don't have a franchise quarterback.
Man, thank goodness that Jalen Hurts is not in Seattle.
How about that? Unbelievable.
That would have been not good.
Anyway, let's get to building the game plan here, sponsored by Golden State.
Works for me.
Thank you. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com and by River Islands. Come home to River Islands in Lathrop and discover the San Joaquin River lifestyle with its lakes, parks, and schools. Start your tour at riverislands.com.
It was for me.
Thank you, guys. All right. That's a lot today. That's a lot. Dennis, for you in this one, in a game where the D-line played the biggest role in last season's game, I think the Niners' offense is even better than it was last year. As John said, they're as healthy as they've ever been. They're maybe as healthy as any team in the NFL. McCaffrey sort of leads the way there. The Niners get out and run, but we were just talking to Mayoko about the linebacking game and them hitting the middle of the field. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, you got to play 49er football, right? You got to establish that run game. You got to attack, you got to expose, these linebackers, and you got to. George Kittle has to have a big game. You kind of have to kind of attack the middle of the football field, but you just play 49er football, right? I mean, you got to protect Brock Purdy. The ball's got to come out on time, and you have to be balanced, run and pass. And on the other side of the ball, you play defense. You got to get after this quarterback. You can't let him make big plays down the field. You got to contain him, and you got to be very, very disciplined in your pass rush because, he can change a football game, and you got to shut down a run, make the team one-dimensional. So it's basic football. You got to win in the trenches, but you can't make mistakes. Offense, you got to win first down. You can't get behind the sticks. No penalties. You got to play a good game. Perfect game.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And look, they're playing their game at the right time. They're as healthy as they've been. They dominated last week in Seattle. The defensive line is really coming together. The game's going to be won there. The offensive line of the Eagles, defensive line of the 49ers. But the thing that the 49ers said after that NFC Championship game is what they hope to execute today, and you just mentioned it. If they can keep Brock Purdy upright, they love the matchup of Bradbury versus Ayuk a lot of the day. Darius Slay isn't having the type of season that he's had in the past, Debo. But the key to the whole thing is you have a healthy Christian McCaffrey who was not even close to healthy last year, and him coming out of the backfield against two linebackers. Remember, Kazir White is in Arizona. TJ Edwards is in Chicago. Nicholas Morrow is not a good linebacker. And Zach Cunningham is probably not going to play today. And then as much as Reed Blankenship has played, and and this is a big storyline today, between the 92 defensive snaps that he had to play in the overtime win over the Eagles and special teams, he played over 100 snaps. They can go after Reed Blankenship as well. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not back there. He's a nice physical safety that the Eagles had. They've lost enough, and then you said this earlier, Adam, they had 70 sacks last year. They're getting a good pressure rate on the quarterback, and like I said, they're too deep on the defensive line, but they're not taking down the quarterback at the rate they were. To me, the only thing I care about is Hassan Reddick off the edge. no tight end blocking. And you mentioned this, Dennis. If George Kittle has to stay in all day, it's a huge disadvantage. In other words, if they have to say, we can't get this guy blocked, George has to stay in, a back has to stay in, whatever, that takes away this advantage of Kittle against the linebackers or McCaffrey against the linebackers or whatever. They have got to be able to block him with the guys up front, give him enough time, he'll get rid of the ball and make the right decisions. They felt like they had a lot of opportunities to take advantage of a defense last year that was better than the defense they have this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I think that middle of the field they talked about, a lot of Debo. And I got to tell you, I understood what Debo was going to do for Christian McCaffrey. I know the run game was, and it should also come as no surprise that when Trent Williams comes back in there, the run game picks up as well. So with Debo and Trent Williams out, Debo is a decoy, and his physicality since he's been back, it is clearly something that was missed in the offense and something that I think shows itself today. We said that, I can't remember one of the losses, whether it was Cincinnati or who'd they lose to in between. It was Minnesota. It was that game where we said, man, Debo's physicality could have really been felt in this game. It was somewhere where they needed it. This is a game where I think it shows up, and if you don't have it, it's a team that feels soft. You know what I mean?
Well, they're going to be Debo is one of those guys. Like, there's a bunch of tone setters on both teams, but I think Debo is one of those guys that we may look, and we've done this a lot in his career, where it's like, okay, 3 catches, 60 yards, and 5 carries for 49 yards, just for an example. That doesn't seem like a lot, but there's going to be a touchdown in there. There's going to be a play where the defense goes with him on like a misdirection and you go back the other way. Like, just to have him on there, and then they'll go to him early. They'll either go with him on short passing game, a smoke screen, or a run early in the game, just so that he can set a physical tone against the defense, just so that he can knock down a safety, a linebacker.
A couple games ago, he ran it first play of the game and then didn't touch it again out of the back.
And they need to go back to that and be physical. But that's, I expect Kyle to pull out a lot of stuff today because, look, we were just talking about who this is more important for. By a mile, it's more important for the 49ers because if they lose this game, they have no chance to get the top seed in the NFC. If the Eagles lose this game, they can still win out, and they've got to go to Dallas next week. They got to go to Seattle the week after, but then it's Giants, Arizona, Giants. They're going to win their last 3 games.
Yeah.
So their thing is right now, their 3-game gauntlet is right now. The 49ers win this game, and as Maddie said, Dallas beats Philly at Dallas. And remember, if 2 things, Jake Ferguson had a ball at a goal line at Philadelphia, should have been a touchdown. Dak Prescott stepped out of bounds right on the just outside the 1-yard line. He stays inbound. That's a touchdown. They win that. They only lost 28-23. Dallas matches up well against Philadelphia. I think they will win next week. So if the Niners win this game, I think we're sitting here in 8 days, and the Niners are the top seed in the NFC.
Yeah, and and that's got to be the goal, right? I mean, we talk about all this other stuff, but you have to win football games, and this is a good opportunity for the 49ers to start stacking some wins. I mean, you build that momentum. I mean, you went on that 3-game skid, but now you're getting ready. This is December now. You're getting ready for the playoffs. You start stacking some wins, getting that momentum. You go on the road and beat a team like Philadelphia. This builds your confidence even more.
And I told you we were keeping an eye on the Detroit Lions, just a corner of our eye, just making sure you're paying attention to what's happening on behind you. They just gave up a touchdown, so 21-7. The Lions lead the New Orleans Saints. Jimmy Graham got into the end zone. How about that? Flashback of Jimmy Graham in a New Orleans Saints uni. How about that? All right. When we come on back, the head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, joins myself and Tom Tolbert every week throughout the season. We had a conversation with him after a relaxing football weekend where he gets to go up and get a win on Thanksgiving and then hang out and watch college and NFL all weekend. We'll talk to the head coach, and we'll play that for you next, only here on the Sports Leader.
I think anytime you're running behind this O-line, you just have to have a lot of trust and patience. And they did such a great job all day. The tight ends blocked super well. Juice always blocks well. I mean, these guys work so hard in the run game, receivers blocking. So you just got to trust it and stay on your landmarks, and you never know when the hole can open.
As the voice there, Christian McCaffrey getting ready for this one against the Philadelphia Eagles. He was banged up in last year's game, did find the end zone, but Niners going to be close to full health here in an opportunity to keep their number one seed hopes alive. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown, and John Lund with you here, getting ready for the Niners and the Eagles coming your way at 125. Only here on The Sports Leader. The head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, every week of the football season joins myself and Tom Tolbert, who you can hear and stream on YouTube, twitch.tv/TheSportsLeader, 2 to 6, Monday through Friday. And we had the conversation this week talking about Thanksgiving and that great win over the Seattle Seahawks. Tom opened the conversation by asking Kyle Shanahan how his Thanksgiving was.
It was awesome. You never get that. And to have 3 days, I had family in town. We were able to have a true Thanksgiving on Friday, and it was so cool because there was actually an NFL game on Friday, so I actually thought it was Thursday the whole day. And then actually did almost the exact same thing on Saturday, just watching college football and having Thanksgiving leftovers all day. So I feel like I had 2 Thanksgivings, not on the right day, but on 2 good days, and then it was a fun Sunday watching the NFL.
And you can come off the win, makes it even better.
Oh, trust me, I would not be talking this way, or the food would not have tasted nearly as good. So it's the world of difference with that.
So I got to ask you about one play before I forget. It was at the end of the first quarter, and I'm assuming you guys grade the players each game, right? You grade them on the plays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wondering, what kind of grade did Kittle get on a block that he threw, which I thought was a really good block? It just happened to be on use check. So I'm wondering how you graded that one out.
Kittle got a good grade. Juice didn't get the best one for not getting that out of the way. It's funny. They sit by each other on the plane, and halfway through the plane, after I saw it on film in my seat, I went back there and started messing with both of them. But I thought Juice was going to be sensitive about it, but he wasn't. Thank God he got his foot out of there because it could have been bad. Yeah. And then Kittle reminded me he was supposed to go to the flat on it and take his guy out of there, so it was his fault for being in the way. And they laughed because he didn't get hurt from it, so it ended up being funny.
Like I always say, we can laugh about it now. No one lost an eye. And so if someone gets hurt, then it's not funny. But when I saw it, I go, damn, that's a hell of a block on his own guy. Youth check must have been like, where'd the hell that come from? What do you? But I mean, just a heck of a win, just a comprehensive team effort. Everything from the defense to the offense and special teams. I mean, you watch that game, did it just seem like, wow, that's what I want us to look like? I mean, I'm sure you're a coach. I'm sure you'll find something to complain about because coaches always do, but you had to be pretty happy with the overall effort.
I was ecstatic. Lots to complain about. Yeah. I can find something on every play, to tell you the truth. So it's I just love the intent of our guys. It's to go up there on a short week. That place is as hard as anywhere to play. That team's always ready to play too. They never take anything off physically or anything like that. That's why I think they're extremely similar to us. And our guys just attacked it. They went as hard as they could in all 3 phases. And there was times where it got tight, especially in the third quarter with that pick 6 and stuff. Yeah. But guys never wavered. They just kept going the same way all game. And usually when you're like that and you got a good team, good things happen at the end. And made it for a real fun weekend and a fun plane ride back.
Talking to Kyle Shanahan here on the Yuma guest line. I always wonder because we played some sound earlier from Nick Sirianni saying, we don't think about last year's game because it's 2 totally different things. He said one of our best players is playing for them, and Javon Hargrave. I'm wondering, do we overblow the stuff about intel? Does he provide things like that? Or I assume you got to ask. I mean, he used to play there, but how big of an impact does that stuff play in a game where you've got tape anyway?
Yeah, 0 to 0. I mean, it could maybe give a little thing, but nothing more that usually, if you think you got something that really helped, it usually messes you up. Because if it's something that good that would help, they're usually aware of it and they've changed it. So that's some of the worst things. Like I've heard, I guess, like a number, John Lynch can tell you a story where a coach got someone's signal from another coach from that team, told Lynch what that signal would be to jump, I think it was a slant route, and they got that, and it ended up being a slant and go, and it was a walk-in touchdown, and that's the last time he listened to the coach on that. And so, but it was the truth before that game. So that's stuff that you really never want to go off of. I couldn't agree with Nick more that, last year was last year. It has nothing to do with this year at all. This is a game in the middle of the season. Yeah, some of the players are the same, but the teams are different, and it's going to be a hell of a game here this weekend.
We're trying to, the Eagles played a lot of really close games, won a lot of really close games, and to me it just seems like, they got a heartbeat that stays the same throughout the course of the game. They're able to function at a very high level, even in close situation, close games. Is that something that a team has, or a team has to acquire? Do you have to go through some of that to be able to kind of build up that equity in the bank to know that, hey, we're going to be comfortable because we've done it before?
I don't think you have to, but okay. I think anytime you're in those situations and a lot, and you experience coming through and pulling them off, the more you do that, everything that your confidence, when it's real confidence, to me is, if it is real, it's always based off your life experiences. Yeah. And if you've been in those situations and you continually come through, hell yeah, you're just going to only get more confident each time. But confidence is one thing, just the reality of what happens is another. Mm-hmm. And just because you haven't been in it doesn't mean that you can't. And you got to perform, you got to do the plays right, you got to make those plays. And I looked at their team in particular. Their quarterback to me has as much poise as anybody in this league, and he never really seems to get rattled. And the style that they can play with, just with the quarterback, the threat of the quarterback run game, being able to scramble when you do play for that stuff, how good of a thrower he is and the weapons he's got around, that I think their style kind of allows them to stay under control a little bit and let the game come to them, because it's kind of a matter of time how they can control it. The whole short yardage situation with how consistent they are with, the Philly push or whatever we're calling it. Those numbers don't lie. That's as automatic of as a play there is. So when you think of situational football, that's really where everything changes. And situational football for them, they're doing as good as anyone that I've seen in a long time.
Just to iron it out, I think it's brotherly shove and tush push. Just so I think
there you go.
I think that's where we're going.
I think I mixed both of them.
It's all good. It's a QB sneak. So you just mentioned it. That play is. It's Tom and I were talking about it yesterday. It's wild that there's so much attention on that play, because it just seems like it's so different than anything we've seen. We see tons of QB sneaks, but they get this weird extra push with it. I imagine you've watched it on tape. Just what are your thoughts when you see it?
It's pretty good. It's pretty impressive. Yeah. Other teams try to do it, so other teams can do it also. But you got to give them the one. They perfected it. The first ones to do it as much as they did it. They get the credit for that. But also, I think the way their center's wired, I think the way their whole line's wired, and I think on top of it, when you have a quarterback there who, from what I hear, is pound for pound the strongest guy on the team and can squat 600 pounds, and then you got some big guys behind him pushing them. You also got an advantage there, and it's also a play that I don't know how they did it, but I don't think they practiced that live too much in training camp the first year they did. So they just planned to do it. Not knowing, I'm just guessing. You walk through it, but you're not going to do that live in practice. And you do it in the first game, and it works, and you keep doing it. And now they've had more reps at it than anyone else, so they've perfected it. They got the personnel for it, and I think the reason it gets so much attention is because not many plays are as automatic as that play. I can't think of one ever that I've seen like that.
It's interesting because I was talking to Coach about this yesterday, and the one thing that jumps out to me about the play, Kyle, is that extra surge that they get. They get stopped initially most of the time, and then all of a sudden it's like a wave. They just surge forward for an extra 1.5 yards or 2 yards. And I'm curious what you think of this. You could think it's stupid. That's a possibility that I'm prepared for, Kyle, so don't worry about it. But I'm wondering if, because of that surge, if the defensive line, I think, hits them and they stop them, but their legs are a little straighter than the offensive line. Like, it looks like the offensive line has a little extra bend in their knees, so when they hit that initial pop, they still have that push that they can get that surge with. And I was wondering if a defensive line, like if they tried to get their feet up underneath them, so when they hit them, they still had their knees bent a little bit so they could surge a little bit more, because it just seems like that surge is what always gets you, and no one's been able to stop that.
No, I hear you with it, and I can't give our secrets on how we're going to stop it. So. But the low man wins, and I think that's what's hard for it. I mean, all those guys, if you don't get underneath the lineman and they're underneath you, then there's going to be no second surge because they're going to get you right away. So you got to get underneath the guys to give a chance, and they're really good at not allowing you to do that. But on top of it, I think that second surge, which everyone has, but you feel theirs more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of chalk it up to their experience and reps doing it, but also they got a special quarterback who's built a little bit different that way, which to me makes it that much harder.
We're talking to head coach Kyle Shanahan here on the UMA guest line. I mentioned Hargrave leaves Philly, comes out to San Francisco. They replaced him with Jalen Carter. Last year there was a lot made in that championship game of that defensive line. They had like 72 sacks or something by the end of the year. It was crazy. What are your thoughts of their defense now? We were looking at the secondary. We talked to some guys from out there, and they were saying that's a spot where the 49ers could be you guys would be maybe a little bit better than Philly, but the D-line for Philly is still going to be tough. Could be a rainy day. What do you make of that defense?
Very similar to last year. I know the numbers aren't there the exact same, but when it comes to stopping the run and it comes to playing everything through that D-line, it's the exact same issues. I mean, they lost a really good one in Hargrave, but they got a really good one back with the rookie. So all the other guys are there, and that's what made it go last year. I mean, just when you have the depth they have on the D-line where you can play with 4 and nickel or they play with their 5 bigs and base, it's a problem. And their coverages behind are very sound. I know they've given up some yards and stuff, but their defense is very built to be a top defense and very built to win. And anytime you have a D-line like that and you can play sound behind it, it takes a number of plays to score, and that's how you can get yards. But when it takes a number of plays to score, and you got D linemen like that there's 5 out on the field a number of the times, you only need one play for one of those guys to wreck it. And when usually you wreck something on first down, it leads to 2nd and 18, or if you ever do it on second down, and it leads to 3rd and plus 12. So usually the drive's over. If you look at percentages, you need one of those plays to end a drive. And because the way their defense plays, and it's hard to get the big one on them, they usually get one of those drives. One of those plays, and that's why they do a good job of getting off the field, not letting you score. And then when their offense gets the ball, it's the exact opposite. It's really hard to get them off because of their short yardage situations. 3rd and 4 is kind of like 3rd and 1. 2nd and 6 is like 3rd and 3, because you always, once you get to that 3rd and 3 element, the threat of what their quarterback can do, they usually got 2 downs there, and it's really hard to stop 2 of those quarterback runs for less than 3 yards.
What are the unique challenges, Kyle, in trying to stop someone like Hurts, who can beat you with his arm, but then he also, if the lanes are open, he can beat you with his legs? I know we talk a lot about quarterbacks like that you got to have, gap integrity as a defensive line. You can't get too far upfield. But you got to get to him, because if you don't get to him, then he can hurt you with his arm. How do you deal with someone like that? Do you just expect occasionally he's going to make a play with his legs, and because he's so talented, you can't contain him all the time, but you do the best you can with what you have?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you got to stress it huge. I mean, you can't just tee off and just go for all sacks all the time, because he's going to rush when that's the case. But you also got to understand, no matter how you stress it, no matter how good you are at it, he's really good too, and he's going to have his plays. You want to eliminate him, but there's going to be times where he does get out of the pocket and scramble and make some plays. And what I always try to tell the guys, that nothing counts until they get points. And so when someone scrambles and gets a big first down, we don't think they should have, you can't go in the tank, because it's about the next play. It's not about that play. And you can get disappointed about it when they cross the goal line. And when they cross the goal line, then it actually mattered. But the whole key is, we gave up some big play. I talk about a verse that I think it was Tampa Bay. There was a number of plays that we gave up on them, but our guys never really changed, and they stood up in the red zone, and we ended up not allowing them to score a touchdown. No, that was Seattle. Getting my weeks mixed together. But that's the whole thing. When you're going against good players, you can't just think that you're just going to go out there and dominate in that area. They're going to have some. It's about us making the plays that get them off the field and don't allow them to capitalize with points.
Like I like to tell fans, Kyle, they don't believe this, but I tell them, I go, they get paid too. The opposition has good players. They get paid too. It's not all about your guys not doing what they're supposed to do. The other guys are going to make plays eventually, and they're like, they still don't buy it. I'm trying to speak truth to them, but they're not getting that part of it. So how do you? That's the kind of thing that it can get frustrating with a running quarterback because it feels like it almost, and I don't even know if I consider him a running quarterback anymore. It's just a guy that can run, but they can really deflate a defense because you feel like you have the perfect defense, you feel like you played it really well, and then a guy just makes a play and beats you for 8 or 9 yards. I mean, how do guys keep that from demoralizing them a little bit? Just kind of slough it off and say, okay, let's not let him do it again, or like you said, let's keep him out of the end zone.
Well, it all does start with the run game. And any team or any player, that guys who are willing to run the quarterback and the quarterback's a threat, that causes huge problems for defense. I mean, you got to change what you do because you don't face that all the time. So there's certain things that if you don't recognize that, they're going to have just freebie yards where plays that to me don't even count because we just gave them 20 yards. They had it before the snap, and those are the things that you got to be very sound in and very disciplined and detailed in. But when you just sit there and do that all day and forget about the rest, I mean, you still got to rush the quarterback. You still got to get after guys. You still got to play well because, just like you said, he's not just a runner. Yes, he is a runner because they run him, and he's very good at it. So the threat is always there. At any time in the game, any situation, it is always there, which makes it a lot tougher. But then there's other things you got to deal with it too, because he's a lot more than just that, and that's what the challenge is of beating these guys. And when they play good defense with that style, that's why they've only lost one game this year, and they didn't lose many last year. So that's why we got our work cut out for us, and so we're also real excited for this challenge.
Well, best of luck in Philly. It's always great catching up with you, and we'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Good coach.
All right,
Talk to
Kyle.
you.
Great stuff with the head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. You can hear him each and every week with myself and Tom Tolbert right here on the Sports Leader. Let's get you a player to bank on. Sponsored by Casino Matrix. Just drop in for gaming, dining, and sports. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER and by 5 Star Bank. Learn more at 5starbank.com. Player to bank on in this one, I'm going to go with the guy who got the incomplete in last season's game. He's checked every box. He's completed every test. I think he's aced every test we've asked Brock Purdy to take. And the one that he got an incomplete on was going to be this one, the NFC Championship against the Eagles in Philadelphia. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I'm looking for a big day for Brock Purdy. When we come on back, we'll give you a couple of scores from around the league, and then we'll go back out to Philadelphia. Check in with our guy, John Dickinson, who is boots on the ground out in Philly for the Niners and the Eagles. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, and John Lem with you, only here on the Sports Leader.
Are you aware of the fact that your team is an underdog, officially an underdog on Sunday? Do you know that?
You know what? I did. Bob let me know that, and good. We like being an underdog. I think the first thing I ever knew about this city when I was a little kid was Rocky. That's all. He's always the underdog. We like being the underdog. No one thought much of us going into last season, and we played the underdog role well, and here we are, and good. We'd like to be the underdog again.
As it was the Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni talking about being the underdog. They opened as 1-point favorites. They are now 3-point underdogs heading into the 125 kickoff from Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champ Dennis Brown, John Lund hanging out with you here, and we are going to catch up in just a few minutes with John Dickinson, newest member of the KNBR lineup. He is out in Philadelphia. We'll get his takes on the game here in just a few minutes, but let me get you some quick scores here from around the league. We'll take a break and come back and talk to our guy JD. In Houston right now, the Broncos have just kicked a field goal. Broncos now trail the Houston Texans, who have been one of the most exciting upstart teams this year. First-year head coach D'Amico Ryans, of course, and C.J. Stroud. 13-3 Houston over Denver right now. The Chargers playing an ugly one at the half in New England, 6-0 in favor of the Chargers. Detroit's up 21-7 at the 2-minute warning over New Orleans. Down in New Orleans, it's 7-5. Yeah, you heard that right. 7-5, the score of the Atlanta-New York Jets game in the Meadowlands, with Tim Boyle, the quarterback for the Jets in that one. 3-3, Pittsburgh and Arizona, under a minute to play in the first half in that game. Colts trail the Titans 17-10. I feel like those two teams play each other like every week. It's what it always feels like, Titans and the Colts going at it 17-10 there with a minute to play in the first half. And Miami and Mike McDaniels 8-3, up 24-7 right now on the Washington Commanders. We'll take a quick break. We'll come on back. We'll catch up with John Dickinson, who was out in Philadelphia getting ready for the Eagles and the 49ers, which is going to be coming your way. Kickoff at 1:25. We'll hand it over to Greg and Tim at 12:25. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, John Lund back with you. We're here at the studios here in downtown San Francisco. We are going to catch up with our guy, John Dickinson, who joined our KNBR coverage of basically all Bay Area sports earlier this week. He's now doing our Dubs OT show. He's going to launch a new show starting next Saturday called Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson. And he is actually out in Philadelphia getting ready to cover this game. He's getting set in the broadcast booth now. And I think we got him. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champ, Dennis Brown, John Lund, the hardest man in Bay Area sports media, John Dickinson, super reporter. What's up, dude? How are you?
What's going on, fellas? Yeah, good to be with you here from Philly. Get off the Dubs OT show and get on that red eye to Philadelphia. Pretty big game today. I keep hearing. Pretty big game between the 49ers and the Eagles, and couldn't be more excited to be a part of the team here at KNBR, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, John, this is Dennis Brown. Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah, you as well, Dennis.
Hey, real quick, we didn't get a weather report from Matt earlier today. What's the weather looking like right now?
Yeah, right now it's cloudy. It had been raining throughout the morning. It was raining pretty good when I landed. I got here to the stadium. It was about 12:30 or so about 4 hours before kickoff, 9:30 Pacific, and they were just getting to the point where they were taking the tarp off for the early warm-up, and as they were taking the tarp off for the early warm-up, the rain had stopped or lightened significantly. So it looks like, and the forecast is projecting, Dennis, that it's not going to really rain and wasn't supposed to rain too much after about 2:30, obviously with the game kicking off at 4:25 local time here, 1:25 back in the Bay. So it looks like it's going to be drying out, but it also looks like it could be coming down at any point. I mean, the skies definitely have that darkness to them to where, you never know what Mother Nature's got in store completely, but the forecast says it should be relatively dry throughout the afternoon and evening here.
John, you getting this, dude? He shows up and he's like, Bill Martin, hold my beer.
Yeah, look at that.
I got this covered.
Well, it does say, I was reading this morning, so it looks like rain a few hours before, but then by the time kickoff rolls around, which is 4:25 East, it's supposed to clear up and then be clear the rest of the day, which I think it's a big deal because Brock Purdy, as much as he played at Iowa State, he played in one rain game there. And then against Cleveland this year, look, Greg was adamant about this. I think there are excuses and there are explanations. He said that Cleveland was an explanation of why he played poorly. So if we go along those lines, and it's not an excuse, then he played poorly in Cleveland in part because of the rain. Well, if it rains today, then you're at a disadvantage. And JD, no, Mom. It's great to have you back, by the way. But look, I want a clean field. I want no injuries. I want to see this thing because we've been talking about it ever since last year and ever since the schedule came out in week 13. We know the stakes, what it could be because you win this week. I think Philly goes to Dallas next week and loses, and all of a sudden in 8 days you could be the top of the NFC. So this is a massive game, and I don't want injuries or weather to take away from it.
No, and I think that's how the 49ers feel about it. I mean, they feel like they're the healthier team. They're the more rested team. I think they were super confident in the team that they brought here in January to have a shot in that NFC Championship game. And then Brock Purdy got hurt, and all hell broke loose, and Johnson got hurt behind him, and they never had a shot, right? They just never had a shot. So I think, you take some of the things that they thought they could do to the Eagles back in January, and I think they probably see more things that they can do, in particular offensively, to move the football and score against this defense that's depleted in the middle of the field. And so I think the Niners come in confident, but the Brock Purdy question, as far as the wet football, I think that's something that it's definitely not nothing. I know I was sitting in for you with Pop yesterday, and he didn't think it was nothing. And is he going to wear a glove? Is he not? I think that's going to be determined by the level of the rainfall. If there's no rain, I think he's probably going to try to grip it and rip it. If it starts coming down maybe a little bit before 4:25, maybe he's got something at the ready that he wants to go to. I'd be a little concerned about that. To me, it's like make the decision and roll with it, not have it be this, maybe I will, maybe I won't type of a situation. But I think the biggest question mark, it's kind of funny, coming into this game for the 49ers isn't really anything about the matchup. It really is about the weather. And then, the other thing that I just kind of bookmarked is, what happens if the 49ers get behind in this game? Because they've just, for whatever reason, not been able to be a comeback team. They've been a front-running team. And so, we'll see. Maybe they come out and they jump them, they get up 10-0 or something like that, and they can play from a position of advantage and cruise to victory. But those are kind of the two things that I've honed in on, aside from the individual matchups in this one to keep an eye on.
Talking to John Dickinson here. He's out in Philadelphia, Lincoln Financial Field, getting ready for the Niners and the Eagles. A 1:25 kickoff, and we'll hand it over to Tim and Greg here in just under an hour here at about 12:25 local time here in San Francisco. I want to ask you about Brock Purdy and how he does play into this game, because we didn't get to see him a whole lot last year. We've talked a lot about the tests that he has seen. And what's interesting to me, JD, is that there's not a lot of situations, if any now, that Brock Purdy hasn't seen before. There's not a lot left where he has not walked in to that situation. The Super Bowl would be one, but he's walked into Philadelphia in hostile territory. He's beaten Seattle on a short week now multiple times. He's actually never lost to the Seahawks. He's done this across the board now for well over 17 games. So how does he factor into this? And is this a game where he has to execute? Or does Christian McCaffrey play a bigger role than we saw last year because of his health and the health of the team?
I mean, to me, it all begins with Christian McCaffrey. As much as the overall success level or ease of the success level in some of these games, when you look up at the end of the afternoon or night, is, wow, Brock Purdy was awesome. And Brock Purdy, played a spectacular game and throwing touchdown passes and making all the throws. And it really does all begin with Christian McCaffrey. And I think today is a game where you look at Kyle Shanahan, and going in the guys that he trusts with the football in their hands and that he wants to get the football to. And it's always McCaffrey, and it's always Deebo Samuel, really. I think it's those two by which everything else comes about in the 49ers offense. Then it's mix in Kittle. If a team's matching up a certain way, then you always want to have Ayuk ready for a big play, down the field, obviously with the yards per catch. Ayuk doesn't have as many, but the ones that he makes are big, big-time plays. And Purdy is obviously at the center of distributing the football there. So I think he's in the best possible position as I'm watching him get some throws in here in the early warm-up. He's in the best possible position, I think, to succeed because this team is fully healthy. When he's had all the offensive weapons, this 49ers team has rolled this season. I mean, it really were a lot of things going on in the 3-game losing streak defensively, of course, but they were also banged up with Trent Williams and Deebo, and McCaffrey had the rib thing, and they got behind in some games and couldn't come back. But the reality is, when they've had everybody, they've been, for the most part, an offense unable to be stopped consistently.
And you talk about how important it is for the 49ers to get a lead and not play from behind. So where do you see the game plan? Is it balance, run, pass, or do you just kind of open up and let George Kittle take over middle of the football field, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo? I mean, how do you attack this football game against this defense, which is pretty good?
Yeah, I think it's looking to the short stuff to Deebo. I think it's the short stuff to McCaffrey. It's Kittle over the middle, without a doubt. I think I think this could be a game where it wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers came out and really looked to throw it a lot, early, even if it is some of the short stuff, and then come back to the run later. But the one thing is Kyle Shanahan's going to come out and want to get the ball in Christian McCaffrey's hands. And the Eagles know that too, so you always wonder if there's going to be some kind of a counter, but I think the 49ers view it as, nope, Christian McCaffrey is our guy, and he's going to get it, and you're going to have to stop him. And so many teams are unable to stop him. But Deebo factors into that as well, putting the ball in his hands and getting him opportunities in space. But I think this game is not so much about sideline to sideline. It's more north and south for the 49er offense to me. It's more push the ball down the field, down the middle of the field. Again, I'm not saying deep shots, but it's move the ball forward, 7-8 yards at a chunk over the middle of the field, even if it is some short stuff that keeps the chains moving.
Our guy John Dickinson, of course, new to KNBR, but certainly not new to the area, and he is the best reporter in all of the Bay, and he's in Philadelphia. He's the link as we get you ready for the biggest game of the year, the 49ers and the Eagles. Let's flip it to the other side, because I think defensively the Eagles aren't what they were a year ago, and they have a ton of talent, but they're not getting the sacks. They're not rated where they were. I mean, they're a good team, but there are places to attack, as you just were talking about. On the other side of it, I think this is the best offensive line in football. They have DeAndre Smith. A.J. Brown is a monster. I wonder if they're going to move Ward because they're similar sized. He took Metcalf out of that game last week. I don't know if they're going to do that with A.J. Brown. Smith, of course, was the one with the controversial catch last year, and he's difficult to deal with. This is a really good offense. I don't know if you're hearing anything about Dallas Goedert. Even if he plays, I don't know how effective he's going to be. But what about, and then, of course, Jalen Hurts, who gives you the added element of the run. He's so confident in coming back in games. So the Eagles' offense versus especially the hot defensive line of the 49ers, how do you see that matchup?
Yeah, but that is the individual matchup of the day, or the group matchup of the day. It's the Eagles' offensive line, I think, against the 49ers' defensive line, which has been playing so much better. I hear you on Mooney Ward potentially moving around on Brown. The only question I would have, and Pop brought this up yesterday, what if they move Brown into the slot? Then it gets a little problematic. Are you going to have Ward really follow him into the slot? And does that open some things up maybe on the outside for some of the other receivers for the Eagles? So I think those are the two things to kind of look at there. I think the Eagles think they can run the football on the 49ers. I think they can put it in Hurts' hands in the running game. I think they feel like Swift can have a big game as well. And so I think that the Eagles are going to try to run it at the 49ers, and it's going to be up to the 49ers to try and stop it. And the wild card is the mobile quarterback. It's the quarterback that's live in the run game. It's the quarterback that can escape on 3rd and 7 when everything's covered and pick up 8. And hell, you don't even really have to pick up 8 with the way the Eagles do things. Just pick up 5 and getting fourth in a long one or fourth and short, and they're obviously going to go for it. So everything they do is predicated around that. So I think they're going to come out and really try and maul the 49ers defensive line, but I think it's a different defensive line than the one that played in this stadium going back to January. So, do that at your own risk, because the Niners defensive line's been wrecking shop of late.
He's John Dickinson. He is the newest member of the KNBR team. Get this, just real quick, John. When did you get to Philadelphia? Did you fly out last night?
I got to Philadelphia at about 8:45 this morning.
So you were red eye?
Eastern time. Yeah, red eye through Atlanta up to Philadelphia.
It's always fun to do that. I love doing that. I once flew through Dallas just to get to New York, just for kicks. So JD was here on Thursday doing Dubs OT, doing Warriors. Friday, he was filling in for John on Pop on Lunch. Saturday, he was back here yesterday. I was here with him. He was doing Dubs OT. Then he gets on a bird. He's out in Philly doing 49ers and the Eagles. When do you fly back?
I'm flying back early tomorrow because I didn't know, as I was looking at different flights, and I'm kind of maniacal in looking at flights, and so I'm like,
I love Mike Huller. You and Mike Huller get along great.
The in-season tournament for the Warriors, and I had booked this, obviously not knowing that I was going to be coming over, but I was probably going to be here regardless. So I booked this months ago, and months ago, you didn't know whether the Warriors may have played in the in-season tournament tomorrow. Yeah. So just in case, now they ended up losing out.
They broke our hearts, dude. They broke our hearts. We don't.
Exactly, but So I'm going early, like 6 a.m. tomorrow, because it was a just in case. As far as maybe the Warriors would have been playing at Chase tomorrow night.
Well, but how about that? And then you take the day off, and then we'll talk to you Tuesday after Dubs and Portland. But we'll talk to you on the post-game show, man. Enjoy the game.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the warm welcome.
Good deal, man. John Dickinson, super reporter, the hardest working man in Bay Area sports media. When we come on back, we still got to get you ready for the Niners and the Eagles. We got the Steve Young Show, our 49er Player of the Week, and our conversation with, is it Greg Papa this week? I think we're talking to Greg in the booth this week. We'll do all that. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champ, Dennis Brown, John Lund here in the KNBR studios in downtown San Francisco. Kickoff at 1:25, only here on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland back with your 49er player spotlight ahead of Week 13, 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles from Lincoln Financial Field. We've been waiting for this one all season long since they eliminated the Niners in the NFC Championship last year. The Niner defense been the big calling card of this team over the last several years, and maybe no bigger player on this defense. Well, there's probably several guys as big, but Fred Warner, the captain of this defense, the guy with the green dot on his helmet, has been in the backfield a whole lot. So far this season, plays with his hair on fire, and you know that now because his hair is dangling out of the back of his helmet. The guy they call the Predator, yeah, I'm gonna break it out for you. The guy they call Predator, that's right. He's gonna be right in the middle of this defense today. That's right. That's for you, Dennis. Why don't we go here to a little bit more on Fred Warner, who's been fantastic for the 49ers this season. The Predator, anchor of the defense, playing at an all-pro level, talked about the biggest game of the year and not focusing on the hype that's coming into this one.
It's not as much so as to say it's just another game. I'd say people try to blow it up because of the weight of it. However, I mean, it's the biggest one because it's the next one. You know, I think that's what I've said, and there are a lot of implications down the line for this game, but is that going to help you focusing on those things going into this game? Not at all. You know, you got to focus on playing smart football and execute at a high level in order to go into somebody's house who is a 10-1 football team, one of the best teams in the league, and get a win.
There he was. That was his final quote there, too. You got that, Dennis? As a Predator soundbite there. That's Fred Warner. He's not focused on the hype of this one. Just focused on getting the win and keeping the Niners' number 1 seed hopes alive. And that's why Fred Warner, captain of this defense, is this week's 49er Player Spotlight. Steve Young, the Hall of Famer and the best half hour in radio, joins Tom Tolbert and I every Wednesday throughout the season in the 5 o'clock hour or on Thursdays many times throughout this season. Stay tuned, though. He joins us every week. He was asked this week how the 49ers can stop Jalen Hurts given his dual threat of passing and running abilities.
The game is more wide open. The guys that are going to dominate into the future are going to be the guys just like that. The sophisticated throwers who can run. People always say a running quarterback. That's a college definition. Someone who runs around and can throw the football. In the NFL, if you're going to play in championship football and dominate in today's game, you need to be a sophisticated thrower of the football. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I think Jalen Hurts is getting there where Lamar needs to get to. And then you have all of that talent to go fill all of that space that's been created with the rule changes. That's how Super Bowls have been won in the last 3 years and the next 15 years, unless they change the rules again. It's going to be won by that talent. And that's why Justin Herbert, he can move around and do that. He just needs the help. Tua and Brock are more related because they are sophisticated throwers of the football, but the physical presence is different. And to go to fill that space up that's been created, they're not 6'5", and they can run like crazy and heave it for 50, 60 yards. I mean, not 50, but 70, 80 yards. Like, they just throw it all over the field. So they're going to do it differently. So the prototype today is Jalen Hurts. That is who you want to draft. That's who you want to develop. That's who you want to be your quarterback for the next 15 years. But you know that it needs to develop a sophisticated passer who can fill the spaces up with their legs. That's when you don't have an answer. In many ways, the 49er defense, if the Eagles are doing it well and Jalen is doing it both ways equally and well, there really isn't an answer other than physically just getting to him and knocking him down. Like, that's why 4 guys bringing the heat and knocking him down is the way to do it. Otherwise, there's not an answer unless he makes a mistake or causes it's just, that's the game today, and that's why those guys dominate. That's why, Patrick Mahomes goes and wins. Think of our Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. Think of Patrick Mahomes. All of a sudden, end of the game, we need some big plays. He rolls out, throws it around, runs around, and now all of a sudden you lose. And that's who's going to win Super Bowls and championship games into the future.
Charvarius has played at a high level for us, but his best football to me is when he's got a really big challenge like DK Metcalf. I just saw, and it worked the week before. We kind of played left and right, but man, I feel like we're missing the boat. You bite your tongue. You say, I don't want to be that guy delving into coaching. Let those guys.
Right.
But at the same time, Kyle and I talk about everything, and I just said, man, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you. I think we should be doing this. And he goes, on a short week where he's putting in the offensive game plan, aren't we?
Right.
And next thing you know, we rectify it. And that's what it takes. It takes good communication throughout a building.
That was 49ers General Manager John Lynch talking about getting after this one here. The guys in the secondary, the defense. This is going to be a different type of game than we saw last year. Hopefully a more healthy game for the 49ers. A healthier Christian McCaffrey, a healthy Brock Purdy. And 49ers, I think, are playing with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, although they say this is just another game. It certainly has implications for the postseason standings. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, and John Lunn hanging out with you here. We're going to go back out to the booth here in just a minute to talk to Greg Papa, who's going to be on the call, of course, today with Tim Ryan. And I think he's ready. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
How are you, Copes? Just walked in the booth.
Well, catch your breath. I'll be feeling all right, man. Are we excited for this one? We've had this one circled since it came out on the schedule, and I think it's rare you end up with a game of this caliber when you're hoping and expecting it's going to be two of the best teams in football this late in the season. This one, at least on paper, going in is going to live up to the hype.
When we left this stadium on January 29th, we knew they were going to come back here at some point, and then we found out exactly when, and it was May the 11th when the schedule release came out, and we knew it was going to be today. We didn't know what the circumstances would be, but they are right now. And I know Dallas won on Thursday. Detroit's playing well today. I think most people feel these are the two best teams in the NFC. And maybe we'll come back here again on January the 28th. Maybe they'll come to Levi's. I just had I don't know if I spoke to you guys before the championship game last year, but I went back and forth and all around that week on the 49ers' chances, and the night before the game, I did not feel good about it at all. I thought Philadelphia is just really good. And they just beaten the Giants off their bye week in the wild card game and completely took them apart. And the Giants were playing well. They went to Minneapolis and beat the Vikings the week before. I have a totally different feeling for this game. I just watched so many Eagles games all week. I've watched just about every one of them. They're cockroaches. They're team cockroach. They are hard to kill. So you're going to have to give them a good shot. But if there's one team that can kill them and crush them, it's the 49ers. And I think getting off to a good start, even though they've shown they can come from behind, what they've done the last 4 games and 5 times this year behind at halftime, I just don't think you want to get behind these 49ers the way they're playing right now. And I just see a fresh-minded approach. Nick Bosa got stepped on this week on the toe, but he looks great. He's out there looking spry. Fletcher Cox is going to go for them. I think Milton Williams will play a lot of snaps today on their D-line because he was concussed last week against Buffalo and didn't play, and they've got some worn-down bodies. The 2 young Georgia guys played a lot last week, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, but we are amped up. This is about as excited as we've been for a regular season game in a while. It's going to be fun today.
And, Papa, I know you heard a lot from Tim Ryan. It's won and lost at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. How do you see both these teams matching up?
Well, their O-line's the best in football, there's no doubt, but I don't think they're as strong as they were last year. Lane Johnson's had some injury issues. He missed a game early in the year with an ankle, and he's going to play today. He had scar tissue and some inflammation from his groin surgery, the adductor, in the offseason. He'll play. He didn't give up anything last year. He did not give up a sack. He did not give up a quarterback hit last year. It was pretty amazing. You have to go back to middle of 21, the last time he had done that, going into the championship game. I've seen him getting beat this year. Jalen Phillips beat him with Miami, and there have been some pressures. It's a great matchup, obviously, with he and Mailata on both ends. They look like they false start every play, in particular Lane Johnson, but their outside leg is back already, and they kickstart out of it. They get out of it so fast. So we'll see which side Nick picks. He picks which side he goes to. May go back and forth between Mailata and Lane Johnson, and they're totally different guys. But it won't just be, Bosa in the end. They'll move him inside with Chase Young. They've done that with Hargrave outside, and likewise for Eric Armstead. So it's the two best, areas of strength for the team, the 49ers D-line, and their 5 number 1 draft picks on the line, and their offensive line. Kelsey's just different, the way he gets out in his space and Guys leading everything. I've never seen a center pull so frequently as Jason Kelsey. He gets to the second level, and they love to run the brotherly shove going to Dickinson's side. And we'll see if Armstead can win the battle against Juergens. And then on the other side of it, their defensive line does not have overall the number of sacks it had last year. But as far as pressures, winning quick, Hassan Reddick obviously and Josh Sweat, Dennis, but the two young guys inside. And Jalen Carter is that good. He's the number 9 overall pick in the draft. Should have probably been number 1, but he had a lot of off-the-field situations, so Chicago traded out of it. And Howie Roseman had him fall into his lap at 9. He played a lot of snaps last week. Is he going to be able to come back? He played 76 snaps against Buffalo, and Jordan Davis 62. That's why I think they'll mix in Milton Williams a little bit more. But the guys on the outside, Reddick and Sweat, they win fast. Cox will play today, and they got the old guard, obviously, in Brandon Graham. So the game is going to be won. Tim says it all the time, and we got some great guys in space. And just watching Devontae Smith warm up, I can't believe the guy plays professional football. He's so skinny. His legs, he weighs 170 pounds. He's just a rail, but he's such a great athlete. And then A.J. Brown's completely different. And then obviously Debo and Ayuk on the other side. But this game will be won in the trenches. And I think it's just as simple as who can control the running game. Whichever team can get to 30, 35. If the Niners get up there, last year in the championship game, Philadelphia ran it 44 times against the 49ers. If any team gets into the 30, 35 range and plays keep away, I think that's going to be the team that wins the game.
Greg Papa is at the link. We're getting ready for the biggest game of the year, the Eagles and the 49ers. And as you said, injury-wise, only Ray McLeod would be significant for the 49ers. Dallas Goedert, we didn't think he was played, but he is officially inactive, as is Zach Cunningham, which leads to something that we talked about all week long, which is there is attackable places for the Eagles, but I think starting first and foremost, without Zach Cunningham, Nick Barrow's in there. I know that Blankenship has had a decent year, but I don't think he's much. I think the middle of the field, as long as they can protect Brock, I think they can put up the points.
You're going to see a lot of motion where the 49ers move guys horizontally, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's Debo, whomever, like Kyle likes to do, the great play callers in football, Andy Reid, Sean McVay. They use the 53 and a third width. He will do that a lot today just to stretch out the box, to even lighten it even more. They are going to attack the middle of the field. Nicholas Morrow's a good player. Raider for a while last year with the Bears. He had 116 tackles. The guy they're going to attack more than anything is Christian Ellis, who will play for Zach Cunningham, the other stacked linebacker. And Blankenship makes up for his lack of foot speed with intuition, instinct. He arrives on time. He made a big play against the Dallas Cowboys and their tight end, Schoonmaker, to save a touchdown literally on the 1-inch line when they beat them 4 weeks ago today. So the guy, he looks like he doesn't fit with all the great athletes out there, but he's just smart and he's instinctive. And then I think Kevin Byard will man-match George Kittle a lot today. So that'll be a matchup to look forward to. And, George is going to have to prove he can run away from Byard, who had Travis Kelce. He had Dalton Kincaid last week when Buffalo was here. It is a loss to not have Ray McLeod, because you're going to have to put back Ronnie Bell, to return punts here and kickoffs. And this is something he's only done one time before in his career. So, going into the championship game last year, you felt like the 49ers had a major advantage in special teams. I'm not sure that's the case. Michael Clay is their coordinator, and he was with the Niners for years before he came to Philly. They had a great game last week. They got a new punter in Brad Mann, and obviously Jake the Make Elliott is on a heater right now. The one thing with them and kickoff returns, they don't return kickoffs. They take a fair catch. No matter where they are on the field to play. With Boston Scott, they've only had 5 kickoff returns all year, so you don't have to worry about Jake Moody and the touchback today. But it will be interesting to see, minus Ray McLeod, John, and he's out with a rib injury, how Ronnie Bell handles this today.
Talking to Greg Papa, who's out in Philadelphia getting ready for a 1:25 kickoff. We'll hand it over in about 15 minutes to Greg and Tim Ryan. We're going to take you the rest of the way. In terms of containing Jalen Hurts, we saw them do a really, really nice job of that with Geno Smith. Just the pocket collapsed either internally or he moved to the outside. They contained to the outside. Tim was saying to me that's evidenced by how many half sacks are seen across the board in these 15 sacks over the last 3 games. Jalen Hurts going to see one of the toughest D-lines he's seen to date. And the Niners are a different-looking team than he saw last season in the NFC title game, especially on the outside. What are you expecting from Nick Bosa and Chase Young today?
Well, they have to collapse the pocket evenly as they did against Geno. You know, there were half his sacks, but really I thought on one of them at the end, Fred Warner should have had a third of his sacks. They all arrived on time. I mean, that's what you have to do. He's different than a young Russell Wilson. I think he's stronger physically with a 600-pound squat, obviously, but he's a powerful guy. And even if you have him, and he gets off kind of like the Joe Burrow play where Armstead had him, Nick had him, Fred Warner had him. This guy's a lot stronger than Joe Burrow, so you've got to wrap him up. This is Team Cockroach, Copes. This is like the 2012 San Francisco Giants. They are hard to kill. How they got through this gauntlet of games, and I watched them all the last 48 hours. The Buffalo Bills had them beat 10 different times, and they could not kill them. It's amazing. You'd think they're down and they're out, and the quarterback symbolizes all of it. I mean, it's from the pocket, the way he gets out of it. He is the entire offense. When they run, it's a zone read with an RPO built into it. So it's an RRPO. He can run it himself. He can give it to the back. He can pull it and throw it. And when he pulls it to run it, he has an option off of that to throw it, and he can throw it to different spots. They can send a tight end to the corner. They can send a receiver to the back of the end zone. He is literally making decisions like Peyton Manning did at the line with not 2 plays but 3 different plays, and then once the play is snapped, he makes a call on that. He's a smart guy. He's already got his master's degree from Oklahoma. He's young, but he's so poised. He's the guy that you have to kill in this game. You have to get him on the ground. He has been sacked 29 times this year, so he will hold the ball a lot. A lot of it is off the RPO action, but if they win this game today, this will be one of the most impressive stretches in the history of the NFL, even going back to Miami and when they were able to beat them on October the 22nd. But Dallas, Kansas City, the Bills last week, and then they got to go to Dallas and Seattle. You know, a few years ago we looked at that tough stretch when the 49ers had Green Bay, Baltimore, and New Orleans all in a row. They wound up losing in Baltimore. This stretch is like double that when you look at the one-loss record, the quality of the play, Copes, and damn, they've won them all until today.
Pops, have a tremendous call. We always appreciate it. Enjoy today. Should be more fun than the NFC Championship game.
Oh, boys. Got a cheesesteak last night at Cleaver's.
How was it?
So good.
Was it?
It was so huge. It was lunch and dinner. It was humongous.
You got the cheese whiz and the whole deal?
No, we're not doing
Nachos?
that crappy cheese whiz. We just go to Pat's and Gino's. This is real Cleaver's, real Philadelphia.
Ooh, that sounds good, man.
All right.
I'll give you a full report tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Sounds good, man. Looking forward to it. Have a great call.
Take care, boys.
Good deal. All right. Greg Papa, Tim Ryan, they'll be on the call here. We'll hand it over to them in about 10 minutes or so to take you all the way up until kickoff. Dennis, how you feeling about the game at this point? I got to tell you, when I was going out, like Greg said, at the NFC Championship last year, I wasn't feeling great going into that game. And obviously the injury happens and you don't get to see the game. So the feeling is different, but I feel like the Niners are the better team, but they're the hot team that's been destroying other teams, whereas the Eagles are finding ways to win. They're battle-tested.
What's interesting, why was the feeling not great last season? I mean, the 49ers were playing good football. Brock Purdy was playing fantastic football. Well, how come the feeling was, Papa said it, now you've said it. I have a hard time looking back a year ago, but what was the bad feeling? Just the matchup?
They were banged up, the matchup. Brock Purdy hadn't seen that kind of pressure. The O-line hadn't been protecting at the level that it has over the last 3 games or 2 games, even without Spencer Burford. I thought they had played really well, but the health of the roster last year was in a far different place, I think, than it is now. They're as healthy as any team in football, and that was the best D-line in football. There's a case now the Niners have the best D-line in football.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about the game. I mean, I felt good about the game last season. I mean, last season, yeah. And, even though we had all these negative thoughts, we still say that if Brock Purdy played, 49ers could have won that football game. So, I mean, I feel good about it. I think they match up well. I think, this is an opportunity, for the 49ers. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has to get into his book and see how he can exploit the middle of the football field. We've been talking about that. Offensive line has to play offensive line, and this defensive line has to do what they can do, contain this guy. I mean, Hurts is a threat. He's a true dual threat quarterback, and he can really get after it. So, and you can't get him in fourth and short because it's going to be that, whatever they call it, the butt push, buddy push, whatever it is. You can't stop that. So, I mean, I feel good about this game. I like the matchups. It's going to be a physical game. You got to be physical. But I do think the 49ers have to start off fast. They got to put some points on the board, and it's going to be tough. Like Papa said, they don't go away. Philadelphia knows how to win football games, and they found a way to win football games. So you got to start off fast, put some points on the board, hostile crowd. You got to take them out. You got to take the crowd out the game. You just got to execute. I feel good about it.
Yeah,
a long answer, I guess.
I think that there are definite opportunities against them, but you hit on something, and look, it's just a fact. Philadelphia's 7-1 in one-score games, and the Niners are 1-2. And when the 49ers, under Kyle Shanahan, and this year's included, get off to a hot start, score first, they've scored, 52 points on opening possession, 7 touchdowns and a field goal. If they can dictate the game, which is getting off early, scoring early, they'll win the football game. If you cannot, then Philadelphia can really take advantage of it. Remember, they've come back a ton. They were down 24-14 to Buffalo. They don't panic. They kind of mirror Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is calm, cool, collected. I mean, that's just what he is. So it reminds me a couple of years ago of Kansas City in 2019, especially in the playoffs. They got behind all those teams. They got behind the Texans 24-0 at home after the end of the first quarter. They come back. So not only do you need to get off to a good start today, quiet the crowd, give yourself some confidence, those kind of things, but then you got to brace for it because they're going to come back on you. And look, both teams are going to make plays. I'm going to say this, and then it's going to be a really low-scoring game. I expect it to be not a high, I'm not talking 40s, but I do expect, 31 points to have to win this football game. And I think the Niners will gain yards. Now, it's a matter of touchdowns over field goals. Buffalo had 505 yards of total offense, and Josh Allen was absolutely great last week. But I think that the game plan, the way that they're going to do it, there's a lot of advantages defensively. The whole key is protecting Brock Purdy. They have the advantages as far as the matchups go to get it. It's just, can you protect him? Because just because they don't have 70 sacks like they did a year ago, they still have high pressure percentages. If you go deep into the numbers, they get after the quarterback. They've got to protect Brock first and foremost. I think it's imperative that if they get the ball first or whatever, take the Eagles 3 and out, get the ball first. They've got to get on the board first, and they've got to dictate the way that the game is played. Because if you go back to those other games, Minnesota, Cleveland, Cincinnati, those teams scored, and you had opportunities. Remember, Christian McCaffrey had the fumble. You had the interception by Charvarius Ward against Minnesota. You had opportunities. Fred Warner had the interception in Cleveland after they had scored on the opening drive. That should have been 10-0, 14-0. They missed the field goal on that. You can't make those mistakes against Philly. They're just too good. They're too confident in coming back. You've got to get out fast, and you got to keep putting the pedal to the metal because these guys, as you said, they're resilient. They will not give up.
And I got a question. I mean, if you win the toss, do you take the ball or defer?
He's deferred every time he's won this year, right?
Yeah, that's a great question because if I think your best unit is still your defense, although, but yeah, man, you shove it down their throat and you go 80 yards.
They deferred last year, didn't they? Did they win that toss and deferred, or the Eagles won?
No, the Eagles got it. Or I think they deferred because remember that it was the Eagles'
first
first
drive.
drive.
I just don't know if the Eagles took the ball.
Yeah,
or
I think
if the
they
Niners
deferred. But you're right. You don't often do that as a coach. You want the ball. Kyle Shanahan is a devout believer in the double up. So you score before the half, then you get the ball back, you score again, and a lot of times the game's over that way. So I don't know that he would change that because I think he'd put his defense on the field and then try to get a 3 and out. But the facts are the facts. As good as this football team is, they're not a play from behind team. Kyle Shanahan in his career of the 49ers is not a play from behind coach. So I think it's imperative they get off early and then can kind of dictate, give themselves some confidence because if Philly gets off early, think about that. If Philly gets off to a 7-0, 10-0 lead, the place is going bonkers. Here we go again. You start questioning yourself. I mean, look, this is not an easy place to play. I was just watching a Brock Purdy pinata getting destroyed in the parking lot. I mean, these people are lubed up, man.
I saw somebody walking through the parking lot, and there was a video of Eagles fans a little bit ago, and they were yelling, "This ain't Zesty Westy." That's pretty good. Zesty Westy's a pretty good thing to call the West Coast. Think the Zesty Westy Coast, all right, bro? Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you. We'll hand it over to Greg and Tim here in just a minute. I want to get you updated on what's happening around the NFL because we said we were keeping an eye on that 21-0 Detroit Lions game. Touchdown now scored by the Saints. It's 24-21, 4:34 to play in the third quarter in favor of the Lions. So Lions up 3 now. So the Saints can really set them back and make sure that their number 1 seed hopes are suppressed or their opportunity of chasing down the 49ers, and they could win the division still, so they would still be atop the Cowboys. Houston's up 16-10 on top of Denver right now in Houston as C.J. Stroud looking to get yet another victory here. They've lost Tank Dell, who got carted off in that game. Chargers are still up 6-0 with 10 minutes to play in the fourth quarter over New England. And we have a A hell of a game going on. Atlanta and the Jets. How about this game, dude? 13-8 in favor of Atlanta right now. Anybody going to do anything?
It's a defensive struggle
in that game. Arizona up 10-3 on Pittsburgh at the
NFC
half.
South should not get a playoff team in. I don't care.
We got to get rid of what the hell? They're going to win a division.
5-6, and they might win that thing or whatever New Orleans is doing, whatever. If you're sub 500, you can't get in the playoffs.
Tim said we should take Florida State instead.
Right.
Of
Come on, man. I mean, whoever's the 5th seed, it's going to be either Dallas or Philly. I mean, they're just going to walk into that stadium. They'll be able to play a half. It's like, we're going to the second round. My God.
It's terrible. It's awful. Don't forget last year, Tom Brady's season ended at the hands of Dak Prescott. They went into Tampa and did that. Yeah. His career ended there. Tennessee, 2 minutes to play in the third quarter, is up 17-16 on Indianapolis. Miami up 38-15 over Washington. Few games in the afternoon slate, but the only one that matters is the Niners and the Eagles. You'll also get Cleveland and L.A., but that game only being played in Cleveland and L.A. markets. And then in Carolina at Tampa Bay, and who the blank cares? Kansas City at Green Bay is going to be your Sunday night game. And then Cincinnati is going down to Jacksonville for Monday Night Football. Final thoughts on this one. You think this is a close one, Dennis? I'm with John. I think it's going to take 31 points to win it. I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners won and they won big. I would be surprised if they were to lose the game by fewer than 7 points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be.
Excuse me, by more than 7 points.
I think it's going to be a close game. I see the Niners, jumping out, a couple touchdown lead, and then Philadelphia coming back, and I think it's going to be a tight game. I think the fourth quarter is going to be very interesting, but it's going to come down to turnovers and mistakes. And I feel the Niners can win this football game, like I felt last season. But it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a good game, physical football game.
I know this is boring because people want to talk about the position guys, but to me, it just comes down to the offensive line being able to protect, because I do think they have a good game plan. I do think they have the skill position players to take advantage. Christian McCaffrey, people haven't talked enough about this last week. He was extremely doubtful to play and just did because it was the NFC Championship game. He's healthy. I think Debo can set a tone. I think all these things can happen. Brandon Ayuk is going to take advantage of either of those corners. They've got great, and we know this, and then George Kittle can play in the middle of the field. But if the offensive line is struggling to keep these guys off Brock Purdy, then George Kittle has to stay in. Then a running back has to stay in. Then they have to adjust. To me, it's the offensive line, and this is a good, deep defensive line for Philly. That's what it comes down to me. I think they'll win, but I do think it's going to be close. It might be Jake versus Jake, Elliott and Moody, and come down to a kick.
I'm looking at the weather forecast right now in Philadelphia. No rain, it says, projected for the rest of the night. It's going to be dark and dim and overcast, but a high of 52, a low of 48. No rain projected. Says it's just cloudy. This is according to my weather app here. All right, we are going to sign off here. Hand it over to Greg Papa and Tim Ryan, who will take you all the way up till kickoff, and then they'll give you the network postgame. We'll be back on with you here on KNBR, streaming on YouTube, twitch.tv/thesportsleader. And, of course, you can hear us live always on KNBR.com and the KNBR app. For Adam, I'm Adam Copeland. For Dennis Brown and John Lund. Dennis, of course, the Super Bowl champion. Thanks to JD, to Greg, and to Matt Mayoko, who are out in Philadelphia. It's the Niners and the Eagles, a rematch of the NFC Championship, and it's coming your way next, only here on the Sports Leader.